Gary Russell Jr. versus Terrence Bud Crawford. I gotta say this, at least you don't hear him talking about he need a tune-up fight before he fight Terrence Bud Crawford. At least this man talking about jumping up 2 or 3 weight classes to fight Thurman. To fight Terrence Bud Crawford. Unlike Keith one-time Thurman, who says, on one hand, send me the contract, and on the other hand, let's be reasonable, I would like to have a tune-up fight before I fought Terrence Bud Crawford. So, for if not anything, I have to salute Gary Russell Jr. for being confident enough in his skill to go up and fight 2 or 3 weight classes above his natural weight versus Keith Thurman, whose natural weight is a welterweight, if not a big welterweight, needing a tune-up fight. You know, I give him that he's coming off of I think a hand surgery, something like that. But at the end of the day, hey man, I've seen fighters fight and win fights with one hand. You know what I'm saying? So go in there and break your hand in the first round as that gladiator, as that warrior, you know what I'm saying, you can still pull out a victory. So I have to give Gary Russell his credit for even talking of going up and challenging a Terrence Bud Crawford. You know what I'm saying? I would love to see something tangible happen versus all the talk right now. Charlo's fighting Deverenchenko and fighting Rosario, that is definitely worth a pay-per-view. Absolutely. Absolutely, definitely worth a pay-per-view. Because there is no way anybody can tell me that it's a guaranteed victory for either one of those brothers. You know what I'm saying? We've seen what happened before with them fighting on the same event, pay-per-view event, and that was almost devastating to both the brothers. One came out with an L, and one came out with a shaky victory. You know what I'm saying? But even though I'm for one, I feel like I gave that first fight between Harrison and Jamel, I gave that fight, in my opinion, that was a victory. Not to say he got robbed. I don't want to say he got robbed, but I think that fight should have went towards him. But anyways, them fighting again, 2 tough fights. Jason Rosario, that's going to be a tough fight. You know what I'm saying? I can't even call that right now. It's 50-50 for me right now. I'm going to be honest with you, 50-50. And Deverenchenko, I'm leaning towards Jamal. You know what I'm saying? I just think he still got so much momentum behind him. He got a lot more power behind him. And I think Deverenchenko, he's been through some wars where he has some war wear. He has some war wear and tear on his body that I don't think he's going to be able to go 12 rounds with Charlo, to be honest with you. Well, I hope Gervonta Tank Davis is keeping his eyes on the prize and not overlooking any competitor. But I think he's going to blast through Leo Santa Cruz if he's focused. But I would like to see if he's disciplined. I want to see if he's going to make weight first time around, and he won't need like an additional hour or additional 2 hours to shed off those last 1 or 2 pounds. Because I feel like Gervonta Tank Davis is almost a complete package, and the only person that can beat Tank is Tank. I think if it comes down to if he lets the lifestyle spin him out of control, that's the only way I see him losing, is if he's not disciplined in the long term. Like I said to Aries Zodiac, I feel like whenever you're not disciplined, it develops weaknesses, but those weaknesses sometimes won't reveal themselves until later on into someone's career. That's why I always like what Mayweather preached: 365, staying physically and fit, always be in fighting condition all year long. Stay in shape so you don't have to get in shape. And especially at that smaller weight classes, to me, when Tank puts on weight, you can see the way you can see the way his weight stays on him, that I would prefer for him to stay disciplined, because at that weight class, I don't think he can afford to be on a yo-yo diet where he's constantly in camp shedding off pounds versus sharpening up his tools. Similar to Errol Spence saying, I started to get lackadaisical in my Mikey Garcia fight and in my Sean Porter fight. I spent most of my training camp just losing all that weight versus sharpening up my tools to where I can just go in there already in destructive mode versus, you know what I'm saying, going and sweating off pounds last minute. So I feel like Leo Santa Cruz won't be the telltale fight of Gervonta Tank Davis having any discipline issues, just like Gamboa really wasn't, even though slightly it was. I almost got into a little bit of an argument with somebody who was wanting to go back and forth with the fight between Yuriorkis Gamboa versus Tank, that Tank showed so much lack of discipline, but he was saying it because he didn't knock him out earlier. I disagree with that. I said Tank Davis showed that he can box and he can, you know what I'm saying, stretch out the fight to where he can soften his opponent up and prepare him for the slaughter versus trying to go in there and blast him out in the first 1 or 2 rounds. But in the long run, I don't think that's going to always be able to work, because if his power doesn't show up in a fight where somebody is just that much more grittier than him, like a Devin, like Tank versus Devin Haney, I think now that is a fight that's going to be a truth test. That's going to show whether or not his discipline would affect him, because I don't think he has any room for error fighting somebody that's as disciplined and that's skilled and that's young. Because Gamboa was on the starting to get to the golden years, the back end of his career. But you talking about Devin Haney going in there just as young, just as sharp as him, maybe not as experienced quite yet, but still under the great tutelage of Floyd Money Mayweather. And that's going to come down to a game of attrition in the game of discipline in maybe just 1 or 2 rounds. So I feel like Tank now needs to really start tightening up and making sure he's disciplined outside the ring as well as inside in the ring. What else I wanted to touch on real quick? It'll come to me. Let me do one more set. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I would like to say. I would love to see Gary Russell Jr. in the ring with a young up-and-coming lion like Stevenson Shakur. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be a fight that's good for both of those guys. And I do agree with everybody else when it comes to Gary Russell Jr. A lot of people have ducked him, and he's getting to the end of his career too. He has to go in there and get it in while he can, and I do feel like he's making some drastic moves. I asked the question, what did everybody think about him going up to Santa Cruz's father and putting his arm around him and things like that? And you know, Santa Cruz not acting on that and making the fight happen. And you know, I slightly agreed with Santa Cruz as far as that just was kind of more of a show. But at the same time, it's an obvious duck, and that fight should be going down. So you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I would just say, I would like to see Gary Russell Jr. in there with Tank or with Stevenson Shakur versus Terrence Bud Crawford. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, man, you know, with boxing being on a hiatus and starting to make this comeback and starting to return, you know what I'm saying? Hey, man, these boxers got to do what they got to do. I was watching He Knows His Sports, and He Knows His Sports was talking about Teofimo Lopez backing out of the fight with Vasily High-Tech Lomachenko, the Matrix, saying that, you know what I'm saying, he wasn't getting paid enough. I think it was like, I don't do pockets, I don't know, but I'm going to shoot it out there. Maybe like $1 million and some change. I'm going to check on my little one. But maybe $1 million, and he's saying he won't take that pay cut. Right now, man, you should be fighting for that glory, and that money will come later. You know what I'm saying? Especially right now with the pandemic going on. Hey, I understand that you want to get paid what you're worth, but at the end of the day, man, go in there and win the fight. They should do some kind of counterbalance where the winner has more of an incentive. So you got to go in there and win. But everybody taking the pay cut, you getting paid $1 million and some change to go in there and get embarrassed and get schooled. Hey, man, you should take that fight for free if you're gonna get took to school and get your ass whipped. But we don't know how that's gonna go. If he's pulling out the fight, which I still haven't seen anything concrete to say he's pulled out of the fight, but if he pulled out of the fight because of money, then I lose all respect for that. There's no respect for that, not at this point in time. It's not like they saying you fighting for free. You know what I'm saying? You should fight now. Like, you know, Mayweather said, Mayweather wasn't really getting paid until after he fought De La Hoya. I was watching Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner said he didn't even look at his checks. He got his checks and gave them straight to his mom. He didn't even start looking at his checks until after he fought Paulie Malignaggi. So that's a whole nother video. Paulie motherfucking Malignaggi. That's a video for another day. Nocturnal Thoughts. I salute.